Today's guest is a foreign influencer who lives in China. Hey everyone, I'm Jason Smith, originally from sunny California, now living in beautiful Beijing. Today's guest is James Wood, a foreign influencer in China with 5,000 followers on Xiaohongshu and 23,000 followers on Twitter. Welcome back to the Bridge to China, James.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Can I ask you, just to start off, and I think we covered this last time, but I want to, new listeners are here. What originally caused you to move to China in the first place?
It was a mixture of things. Ever since I was young, I always had a fascination with China, the Great Wall. I even used to watch Monkey King. It was actually broadcast in the UK when I was in the UK when I was a child. I've always had an interest, but it wasn't until I actually married my wife, who is Chinese born, and came here with her for the first time in 2016, I believe. And that was the first time I ever set foot here. And ideally, I would have come earlier.
Well, 2016, so the skies were still a little bit polluted. It's not quite as advanced as it is today because, so much has changed so fast. What were your first impressions of coming to China?
Funnily enough, we actually came to Fujian province, which has had pretty good air quality at that point too. But my first initial reaction when I first got here, I was actually a little bit terrified because I'd never been here before, and I can go into that a little bit later in the interview. But I didn't notice pollution per se. It was more of a culture shock that hit me more than anything else initially.
Well, what kind of what aspects were there to your culture shock? What kinds of things surprised you, for the better and for the worse?
Yeah, for the better, I had a lot of misconceptions about what China was like before coming here, and I think a lot of people have the same feelings. But when I first arrived, I almost felt like I had stepped into an alternative reality in a way. That's the only way I can describe it. It's because I could see familiar things, buildings and restaurants, but then the culture, excuse me, and everything else seemed very foreign to me. That was the initial feeling I had.
Wow.
Good or bad, I think it was a good experience overall. It was more uncomfortable in a way, adjusting to that difference.
Well, let's say, what kind of behaviors did you not like? For example, let me give you an example. When I first came to China, it was pretty common for people to spit. And now that's not common. It's uncommon for that to happen. But it's something that's changed in Chinese culture over the period of the last decade plus. So what kind of things did you notice that you were like, wow, that's just not the way we do it back home?
Yeah, spitting is one of them. I first arrived in Kunming, which is a small city about 3.5 hours drive inland from Fuzhou, the capital of Fujian province. And I noticed it a lot, especially in the older generation. There was a lot of aging population in Kunming, and they would hawk and spit just about everywhere. And to me, that was very, very foreign. I didn't like it. I had to tell myself, well, I am in a completely different country, a different culture. I have to suck it up and accept it because it is what it is. But I didn't like it. And that doesn't happen back in Australia or the UK. Only if somebody's got an attitude in the West will they spit.
Right, yeah. That's true too. I would often think, did I do something wrong? Why is that guy upset? But it was like just casual behavior. Well, what things, go ahead.
Yeah. There was actually something else that I noticed as well, because it was similar at the time. It was similar in Kunming and in Fuzhou, that people, the older generation, would spit or move past that. But there was also something else I noticed, and it was people coming out of their shop front and throwing the trash on the sidewalk, just tossing it out there, because there's people on the streets, and generally older people coming past, and they would clean the streets all the time. They're coming past with their broom and their little tray, and they're cleaning it up. And I didn't like that either, because I thought, well, that's kind of, for one, it's littering, and that's something I didn't do in Australia, and if you do that, you get in trouble. And two, I felt sorry for the older gentleman that was sweeping the streets. But having said that, from 2016 to now, I hardly see that at all.
I've never seen that. I'm actually kind of surprised. I guess that's Sunming must be like a third or fourth tier city or something.
It's a fourth tier city, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's a fourth tier city. And Fuzhou is a second tier city, and I've seen it in both. Although now in Fuzhou, every time I travel back there, because I'm in Xiamen now, whenever I travel back there, I don't see as many people spitting, although it still happens.
You know what? It's really interesting you bring this up because I'm from San Francisco, and when I first moved to China, it was there were places where the roads weren't even paved in Beijing. There was actually gravel on the roads, but and that was 2012, and now, wow, Beijing is 10 times more advanced, the better infrastructure, a cleaner. Like if you go to the streets of San Francisco, it's kind of like what you're describing. Everything's dirty. There's homeless people there are drug addicts everywhere. It's completely reversed in a way. Like America has kind of declined and China has kind of advanced. So how would you characterize how China has changed from then to now?
It's mind-blowing, to be honest. It's mind-blowing. I had my idea of what China was like originally before I even come here. But when I came here for the first time, I saw these things and I thought, okay, I wonder how long it's going to change. It's probably because I'm in a second-tier city or a third-tier city. But then I went back to Australia and was stuck back in Australia during COVID. And there was a period of time, I think it was nearly 5 years, 4.5 years, that I hadn't been back, my wife and I hadn't been back here. And once we came back, we noticed that Fuzhou had a metro system that, granted, was being built while we were there, but it was up and running. And we were just like, wow, that's quick. They've improved the infrastructure. And it was just like, wow, okay, how can they do this fast? New high-rises popping up all over the place that weren't there before. Wow. It would take 3 years, I'd say, back in Australia for some projects to even complete. Some of the main roads can take 6 to 8 years, which is a phenomenal amount of time.
That's a really good point. I was talking to Jerry Gray one time, and he mentioned, he left for a trip for like 3 or 4 weeks to go bicycling. He does these bicycle trips across China. And he came back, and from the view from his apartment, he could see there was a new hot stretch of highway that was just there, that wasn't there before. It's amazing how fast things can get done. Well, some habits the Chinese folks have, like they carry around their own shuibei, their own water bottle.
Yes.
And they make tea for themselves on the road or out. You drink their own tea in restaurants or at work. So they have their own habits. Have you picked up any Chinese habits? Have you sinified in any ways?
In many ways. I often have a lot of my Chinese friends say that I now have a Chinese heart. They call me an egg, like I'm white on the outside and I'm yellow on the inside. It's kind of cute. I like it. But yes, Reshui is a big thing. Like in Australia, people would just happily drink cold water, iced water, all day, without ever second guessing it or thinking about it. But since being here and seeing everybody walking around with their bottles of tea, they're always drinking hot water, I've come to actually learn reasons as to why they do that in a Chinese medicinal aspect. And now I find myself going back to Australia and I'm having hot water or warm water. And my parents and friends are like, what the heck is wrong with you? What are you doing? I don't want cold water, even during the summer. I'll have warm water. It's interesting.
I haven't adapted to the hot water thing. Maybe I was just too old. I'm like almost 50 now. But my wife and I went to Mishue, which is like a very famous ice cream and drink place, yesterday. And I said, oh yeah, I'd love, she's ordering for us. I'd love some lemon tea. That would be great. But she gave me hot lemon tea. And I was so confused because I thought she was going to give me cold lemon tea. But I enjoyed it. It was fine. It was wonderful. So you are an influencer now, and you're a huge part of the conversation about China globally now. So I would like to. What kind of inspired you to be, so laser focused on China in a geopolitical context?
Yeah, I never expected it myself, uh, but it's coming from basically I don't like the way China is seen or portrayed on the outside. And that's something that I only came to learn after coming here and especially spending time here and living here. I've realized that what had been said and what continues to be said, especially back in Australia, is largely false. I mean, yeah, I mean, I didn't see it happening. I had an X account and I started posting stories about my life there. That's how it started. And then I remember getting comments from people, and they would say, "Oh, you're a Wumal, you're part of the 50 Cent army. You're doing this, you're doing that." And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. If I was in Australia and Australia was getting a bad rap, I would probably share stuff about Australia, saying, "Hey, look at this. This is great." But I just felt in my heart that it was incredibly unfair that China and the Chinese people are being seen this way, and it's incredibly wrong in my eyes. And I feel it's not that I'm standing up for China. I just feel that I'm here and I've got the medium to be able to put my story out there, not just my own story, but also sharing stories that I've read or discussing news topics as well.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Can I ask you, when you moved to China, how did you find work? Because I get this question a lot on Xiaohongshu, Red Note, and other platforms where foreigners will say, "I want to move to China. What do I need, to do?" So when you were thinking about moving to China, because maybe, I don't know, your wife wanted to move back, how did you go about finding a job?
Well, it's interesting because it wasn't actually my wife that wanted to come back here. She had lived in Australia for 19 years and she had gotten used to that way of life. It was me that wanted to come here. I came here on holiday at first, but the decision to move here was largely mine. But we came here for a year initially on essentially a gap year, so I didn't really work. I took time off of work in Australia. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. Not a lot of people get to do that, but I did. Finding work was interesting because when we came back after COVID, that was the beginning of 2023, I had contacted a school in the city that we knew that we were going to be moving to, and I connected with some of the staff there and we got chatting, and it was like, okay, well, I'm going to come over. We're moving anyway. So we moved here without me having work beforehand.
Wow. How did you get a visa?
I came on a Q1 visa, a family visa.
Wow.
And we were sponsored. Excuse me. We were sponsored by my wife's family because my wife has an Australian passport, so she's actually seen as a foreigner here as well. So we came on a family visa, no work, and I spent about 5 months, 4.5 months, I went to the school. I met with the staff. I made friends. I connected with them. And then it just turned out that one of the teachers teaching the subject that I wanted to teach was leaving. Funnily enough, he was from Australia, 25 minutes drive south from where we were living. Mind blown.
Wow.
But he left and went back to Australia, and I took his job. And that's how it happened.
Well, I'm sure the school thought that was serendipitous.
I thought it was serendipitous. It was a big gamble, but we had family here, so it was okay. We didn't have to worry about finding an apartment, renting, and doing all of that in the beginning. We had a place to live, so we could do it that way.
For my next question, I kind of want to juxtapose it. There are some YouTubers, I'm not going to say their handles or whatever, who say that China's very unsafe, and they post videos of, like, I don't know, motorbikes being stolen that they found on Douyin from 2022 or something, and then they're like, oh, China's very unsafe. And then there's people online on TikTok and stuff that say, oh, China's super safe. What do you think? What's your opinion? How safe is China? Do you feel safe at night? Does your wife feel safe at night? Is it dangerous? What do you think?
It is not dangerous, and I'm not just saying that to appease anyone. It isn't dangerous. In fact, one of the reasons why we decided to leave Australia is because crime in Australia and drug-related problems are on the rise. Not as much so as in the States, but it's heading in that direction. And we had our home broken into. We had the place ransacked. This was 2 weeks out from our wedding. My wife lost her rings because we'd only just got them resized and they were in the house. It's a completely different story. But then there were also issues with drugs and teenagers breaking into homes to sell valuables to get money for drugs, and it's just getting worse. And we're seeing that trend. And we looked at our daughter and looked at each other, and one night I just said, do we really want to risk our daughter going in that direction? And we can't control the friends she makes. And we came here, and since coming here, my wife was going out with friends. She was coming home at 2:30 in the morning, and the first time it happened, I was checking on the phone saying, you okay? What are you doing? Tell me you're okay. But I've learnt now, after going out myself and after witnessing my wife going out on her own, that there's no fear. I mean, I'm not saying crime doesn't happen here, but it is incredibly, the percentage is incredibly low in comparison to Australia. And you've got that population difference too. So for me, it doesn't quite make sense, but it is safe here, and incredibly so. And if it wasn't safe here, I wouldn't be comfortable coming here with my family and settling here. It's that simple.
Okay, so a lot of people post videos online about technology in China. Have you seen drone delivery? Have you seen a flying car? Have you seen driverless cars? What kind of tech have you seen in China? And, how would you compare it to life back in Australia?
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say, I haven't seen the flying cars or the automated cars yet. It's probably the city I'm living in. But the car I own can completely drive itself, very much like the Tesla. I allow it to sometimes, but I'm old-fashioned. I'm nearly 52, Jason. I'm old-fashioned. I like the car. I like to be able to be in control, but I've tried it and it's like, wow, okay, this is amazing. But I've seen the technology in other cities, and it's blown me away. I mean, the flying cars are insane. The drone delivery, I believe that's happening in Shenzhen and some other pilot cities at the moment. I haven't seen that yet. Technology-wise, in comparison to Australia, is the internet, I have to say. One of the biggest things. In Australia, I worked in information technology for over a decade, and internet is very important to me. I have internet speeds here and upload speeds here that just put Australia to shame. And my friends back in Australia who work in the IT sector can't believe it. I send them screenshots of my speed tests. I'm like, look at this. And they're like, what? I'm like, yep. It's incredible. The internet speed here is incredible. And the EV technology and the uptick of EVs here, I can't remember the exact percentage of EV uptick, but I think it's over 50% now of China's population or Chinese cars on the road are EVs. And I think that's insane. And that same technology is now coming in Australia. Australia's got BYD, Geely, Jika, and another one, which I can't remember which one it is now. But they're in Australia now, and the technology is incredible. Incredible.
That is incredible, because in the United States, we manufacture a lot of cars. We cannot get Chinese cars because, I think it's a little fair. The United States is worried about losing, 1 million jobs because they can't compete, quite frankly. American automobiles are not, they may be as advanced in some cases, but they are not as affordable, not by a long shot. So, an $8,000 BYD in America would be the end of Ford Motors. So we don't have them.
Do you think if BYD, sorry to cut you off there, Jason, if BYD or other Chinese brands were to actually open up manufacturing plants in the US and actually employ people, do you think that would go in the right direction? Would that be something that they could look at? Because I don't see the US being able to compete with China.
I think you're right. I think the direction that we should be going, ideally, in my opinion, and the opinion of many experts, including Mitch Presnick, who is a researcher at Harvard University, thinks that there should be not BYD opening factories necessarily, but BYD Ford joint venture companies working on products that are together, where some of that technology gets transferred. Here's the problem with that is that China owns a lot of more advanced technology in the field of batteries and rare mineral processing. That rare mineral processing, China is ahead of the United States by 20, 30 years. And so China is worried that if a lot of that technology got transferred to the United States, that the United States would no longer, that China would lose its trade strengths against the United States, and the United States would then take advantage of China vis-a-vis other technologies as well. So it's a very complicated issue, and it may take time to resolve, but I'm with you. I think cooperation is the way forward. Let's switch up a bit. The apps that are commonly used outside of China are not the same as the apps that are commonly used in China. So as a foreigner living in China, what kind of apps do you use, and how do they function? What are they like comparison to the ecosystem outside of China?
Well, for one is my car. In Australia, we have connectivity in the cars called Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. They're the two ways that people connect their cars to the internet and to media. And it's always through the phone, whereas here it's moving more in the way as Tesla have. My car's got a 5G SIM card or 5G connectivity, and it's completely independent of my phone. I can connect my phone, but everything, the whole ecosystem is independent. And I just find that incredible, and I find that even those Chinese vehicles, the same Chinese vehicles are going to Australia, and that functionality is being stripped out, and the older functionality is going in. And I find that just incredible. Australia has Uber, which is similar to Didi. It has Didi as well, but it's incredibly expensive. I mean, the convenience factor there isn't there because people don't want to spend the money. It's more paying the money for the convenience, whereas here the convenience there and it's affordable. It's the opposite way around. But on my phone, I have tons of apps. Sorry, I'm recording audio. On my phone, I have tons of apps. I have Dianping, which I use to have a look at all the ratings of places in and around the area I am. And I'd say that's probably similar to Google Maps in terms you can see reviews. Meituan, I use that for ordering anything, from medicine all the way through to power boards, electronics, food. Olama, Taobao. Taobao blows my mind. I mean, in Australia,
what
you've
is
got
Taobao?
eBay and Amazon. Taobao is just amazing. I order everything here on Taobao. Every electronic item you can think of, books, anything and everything, and it's at my door within 3 days. I have a lot of other Chinese apps on my phone, WeChat as well, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think I use as many apps as you. I'm really, I don't like learning about new kinds of things like that in that way. So I just downloaded, I think I have JD, and so I don't use Taobao because I just have JD. And then for food, Ulama exclusively, I don't have Meituan. I just have one because I don't use Dianping, and I think I use everything else is just WeChat. Because I'm like, I don't want to have 15 apps. I want to have 3 that just do what I need them to do, and then that's it. And also, what's cool about WeChat is you can just download Meituan or Ulama into WeChat and then use WeChat, and then you don't actually have to use the other app. Yeah, it's like a mini. I have a lot of mini programs. I have 100 mini programs, so I can just use WeChat for most things.
My wife has looked at my phone a few times, and she's gone, "How many apps have you got? I don't even have half as many apps as you do." I think it's probably because I come from a tech background and I'm driven to learn, so I have to translate every screen I'm on to figure out what options are. And then I remember that. Hopefully they don't update the app because then I have to learn it again. Sorry, I cut you off there, Jason. Keep going.
No, it's fine. Well, okay, what would you say about, what's your opinion? I just mentioned cooperation is the way forward. Australia is a huge part of what's going on because Australia's largest trade partner is China. And I think Australia actually is one of the few major countries around the world that enjoys a trade surplus with China, meaning Australia benefits enormously from exporting to China, which is not the case with a lot of other countries. And yet, at the same time as that's true, Australia seems to be siding with, the United States and at least politically stating that China needs to be contained in all this. So, what do you think about this Sino-U.S. Australian situation geopolitically? How do you think Australia should be dealing with China?
Well, I tend to be very vocal about this, even when I go back to Australia or I'm talking to anyone back in Australia. They don't particularly like it, but some agree, though. Australia's best positioned to be part of Asia Pacific, to partner more with China and collaborate more with China. I think it'd be better for Australia's economy and for the Australian people. I've always felt that way. But Australia is kind of tied at the hip with the US. I think it goes back to war times, and ever since then they've kind of had this agreement. And there's a lot of infrastructure in Australia that's being used by the US. We've got the name has escaped me now, but there's this place. It just seems that Australia isn't willing to stand up and say, we're not going to do that. We have a relationship with China, and that relationship is going to benefit us. It seems as if they always bend the knee, in my opinion. I may or may not be right on that sense, but that's how it feels.
Well, okay, so you are into tech. A lot of your posts are pertaining to tech, and we've already talked about this a little. What would you say are there misconceptions about technology in China, outside of China?
Yes.
What are they?
Well, you've got the Great Firewall. You've got that's what it's called on the outside. And I originally, coming from tech myself, I've seen the Australian internet. I've seen how it works, and people, can access things, access everything. Initially, when I first came to China, I was conflicted because I was thinking, that they're blocking this and blocking that. It's making life very inconvenient. But then I started to learn why. And when I can see what goes on Western social media, on the Western media as well, it's all negative. It's always glorifying crime, and it's glorifying all these different things. And then I've come to learn that it's more about potentially keeping that negativity out and allowing China to focus on its achievements rather than focusing on all the negative things going on around the world. And also, you have Huawei phones, and you have, the handset technology here, which Australia would benefit greatly if they allowed Huawei handsets in, because they're incredible. They're insanely incredible, but they're worried about spying. I mean, they're even worried about Chinese electric cars spying on them, and Chinese fridges and things like that. I mean, the paranoia is off the charts, but everything's reversed for me. I thought of things this way before coming to China and first arriving here, and now I see it in complete reverse, and I see why. And I find that fascinating as well.
Do refrigerators have microphones? How does a refrigerator spy on someone? My refrigerator does not have a microphone. So, I mean, it doesn't have any. Maybe they're talking about super advanced fridges that talk to you and communicate with like an AI, because my refrigerator knows the light's on or not. Like, that's it.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, anything and everything that has an internet connection that is known to be Chinese made, people are automatically paranoid. And I mean, that's the media's work has done that. It's fed people that paranoia and allowed that paranoia to grow. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, yeah, there are refrigerators that exist that have microphones. They're smart ones. You can talk to them, and it can stock up an order. But certain things are not allowing into the country.
Wow, I have a wonderful. I got a new toy. I just want to brag about. My wife decided to get a one of those floor cleaning robots, but she was like, if we're gonna buy a robot that can clean the floor, it's got to be the best. So we spent 3,000 RMB, and we got this beast that can like suck and do vacuuming and do mopping, and it like has AI, and it can talk to you, and it's just amazing. I'm delighted. My floor has never been shinier. I don't, and it does have a microphone because it can hear me talking to it. So I guess, like, I don't know. Now some company knows whether my floor is clean or not.
Yes.
Well, what's something that you love about China? Something, a daily life kind of thing.
Um, I love culture, sitting and drinking tea and talking to people. I find that amazing and relaxing. I mean, granted, my Chinese isn't that great yet, but it's getting better. And allowing myself to sit with people and try, and defaulting to English when we can't communicate properly, because believe it or not, quite a few of the Chinese people I've met here can speak English well enough, which is good. The culture, drinking tea, the culture itself and the food is incredible. I go back to Australia now and I get sick of burgers and sandwiches, and I think to myself, I just want rice and something simple now. Yeah, food, tea, the culture. But something else that's not so much every day is the history. The history here just blows my mind. Every time I read something about China's deep history, it just absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, there's also the physical aspect of history. Like, I don't know, Australia doesn't have very long history, or does it? I'm not sure. But in the United States, California, in terms of architectural structures, nothing's old. Like, nothing's older than like 100 or maybe 150 years old that you can see, that you can find, other than nature. So in China, it's amazing. I don't know, maybe not Shenzhen because everything's new there, but in Beijing, you can literally be walking along and there'll be a temple there, and I'll ask, I'll ask my wife. She knows everything. I got to say that too. And I'll say, how old is that? And she'll say, oh, that was built like, 1,600 years ago or something.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind. The physicality of the history here is really, really phenomenal.
Insane.
Um,
I live in Xiamen, and it's the same here. Like, you've got the new structures and buildings, and then you've got the old architecture. And I mean, last year as well, the end of last year, I travelled to Xi'an. I went to Xi'an by myself because I wanted to see the tombs there, the mausoleum, sorry, and the terracotta army. And when I actually learnt about how old these things are, I stepped back and I was just like, wow, there's so much history here, and I love it. So I mean, and you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere with the temples.
you
As well.
you just went during the summer?
I went. I'm trying to remember the date. I'd have to come back to you on that, but it was last year, late last year, and I travelled there, and I didn't have my driver's license at the time, so I had to hire a driver to take me to certain sites I wanted to see. And when I shared stories about that outside of China to certain people that were fascinated with ancient history, they were like, "You didn't get put in prison? Oh, you're not allowed to go and see these places? Why are you there? Why are you taking pictures? Oh my God, you're so risky. Please take care." I'm like, I had the guards coming up to me smiling and trying to talk to me and converse, and there were tourists, but mainly from within China, that were visiting, like the Maoling Mausoleum, for example, and the Maoling Museum, which fascinated me, and I was taking photos of all the artifacts, thinking this is just amazing. And there were tourists there as well. Granted, there were no foreigners because most of them don't know it's there. But they were like, "Oh, you got to be careful. You get in trouble." And I'm like, "Well, no, I wasn't in trouble." Yeah, it's another misconception.
Wow. Well, I think if you're taking pictures of a military base, yeah, that might be a concern. But if you're anywhere else except for that 1% or whatever, you're fine. Like,
Even
it's just
in
like
Australia,
anywhere.
that would be
If you go to the United States, yeah, exactly. If you're a Chinese person or a Japanese person, and you go to the United States and start taking pictures of a military base, yeah, you're gonna get in trouble. Same in China. This is exactly the same.
Exactly. Yep.
So, okay, social media. Do you use Chinese social media? Because you're on Xiaohongshu. What I get, okay, let me put this in context. What I get a lot is, oh, I would never come to China. They're not allowed to talk about stuff. But I use Xiaohongshu, and I know that Chinese people talk about everything. So how would you characterize Chinese social media? And how is his discourse similar or dissimilar to your experience of Western social media?
Well, I see social media here in China as being almost like positive society, almost. Because I use Xiaohongshu, I use Douyin, I use Weibo. Granted, I don't use Weibo as much as I do the others. And I use WeChat channels. But what I've seen, and especially when we had Xiaohongshu open up its doors and allow a lot of foreign people coming in to use the platform, I could see that even before that, I could see that it was focusing on a lot of lifestyle stuff, everyday stuff, fun, happy, positive. It didn't have any of, I mean, granted, there were some negative things that would pop up every now and then. They were talking about things, but it's not as amplified as it is on Western social media. And it's refreshing. And now I find myself going back to Australia. I don't even go on Facebook anymore, because it's just everything that's popping up. It's either like from family and friends, which is nice, but I'm seeing a lot of stuff about car chases and teens doing this and doing that. And it seems that the focus is in a different way. It's not that Chinese people don't have freedom, it's just Chinese people or Chinese social media tends to want to focus on the good stuff rather than the negative things or glorifying anything. I'm not too sure if you...
That's a really interesting... I know, I was thinking about this too. I was on the Global Times recently. I read an article on the Global Times about a woman who got trapped in her apartment through no fault of her own. Some kind of cleaning lady, perhaps. I'm a little confused about it. But she was trapped in her apartment. She couldn't get out for whatever reason. And she had no media, so she couldn't communicate that she was trapped in there. So she bit her finger and wrote in blood onto a pillow the address of the apartment she was in, threw it out. A delivery guy found it immediately, because that's a rare thing to happen, and called the police. The police used that to go find her in the apartment and let her out. And, you know, I was thinking about this because you very rarely do read articles about this, or it doesn't get amplified. And it doesn't seem maybe that this stuff is happening a lot. But if this were to happen in the United States, this story, it would be echoed for days, because the clickbait. They want to make clicks. They want people to click on their news. It'd be on all kinds of different media everywhere. People would be talking about it. It'd be a social discussion. They'd be talking about it on morning shows, evening shows, because it's something, you know, dramatic. But, you know, you hear about it in China. It's like, oh yeah, that happened. But it's not echoing around everywhere all over the place just so that people can get clicks. And I think you're right. Right, I think you're right. I think in China they have a tendency to say, oh yeah, this is going on. You know, there was an earthquake. There's soldiers going there to help. So many people died. But it doesn't just like someone died here, and it's like bouncing around a lot. It's more about like what's being done, and now it's resolved, or like, and the positivity things, oh, this got built, that got built, or, you know, you're right. I think there is a tendency, not completely, but it tends to be more focused on the positive, where Western media is like trying to be sensational. So they just, everything that scares you or frightens you, yeah. Okay. Well, I want to ask you about something lesser known. You know, I mentioned tea and hot water a little bit before, and so did you. What is something about Chinese culture that is not so well known, but that you like, or you're fascinated by, or that's just interesting?
Yeah, I've seen the first thing that pops into my mind is the first thing I experienced when I moved to Sunming, and I saw a lot of people walking in the mornings, and they're getting up. Granted, more of the older generation, and they're walking and they're doing this, and they're slapping their arms and doing this, and it was echoing through the complex, and I'm thinking, what the heck is that? It's like 6 a.m. And I looked out and I was seeing it, and I was asking my wife, and she's like, oh, it's just for blood circulation or something. But after a while, I made some friends, and I was talking to them, and they were explaining Chinese medicine and circulation, and actually to do with blood flow and things like that. And then I was learning a lot about hot foods and cold foods and things like that. So not too sure whether this is the topic that the best fit the answer to your question, but that's the first thing that came to mind, and I've come to learn why. You know, Chinese ladies will not eat certain foods that are cold during certain times, and then you're not meant to eat hot foods or oily foods if you've got certain conditions, and I find that really interesting. It gets a lot of like laughs when I explain it back home, like whatever, but it kind of makes sense, to be honest.
Well, I tend to not have an opinion, but I mean, I know what you're talking about. There's so much of this, like at this time of the day or this time of the night, your body is likely doing this, so you shouldn't, or you should do these things. There, but I have a kind of like a neutral perspective, because China does have thousands and thousands of years of history. So I'm sure that there are truths within a lot of the information that they have in traditional Chinese medicine, and the times of the day and the times of the week that they use to make these, even the times of the year. I had this explained to me one time by a Chinese gentleman. He has an app. He had an app that told him what to eat that day, and based on Chinese traditional medicine and calendar. And I was like, wow. So it tells you what to eat. And he says, yeah, but Jason, it's not that complicated. Mostly it's saying the kind of fruit you should eat is the kind of fruit that's typically in season. So, if it's in season, typically you should be eating that. If it's not in season, it may not be the right time to eat that. And I just thought that was an interesting perspective, because, the Earth has like 5 billion years of evolutionary history. Maybe there are, cyclical things going on that are difficult to perceive. What would you say has challenged you about Chinese daily life? What is something that's been difficult, or you have a hard time accepting? Anything like that? Because I'd be interested in the whole picture of your perception of China.
Yeah. First thing, that not so much about something that I can or can't accept. Language is obviously a huge barrier for me. I came here without really being able to speak much. I mean, I had a few words here and there that I learned from my wife, and she always refused to speak Chinese to me in Australia. But that was a huge barrier. Granted, I'm still not capable of fluent conversation, but I have the ability to get by, so I can do things on my own now, which is a huge thing. When I was in Australia, I was kind of like doing a lot more for my family and doing a lot more. I was more of the person who would do things. And coming to China, that whole role was reversed. I was depending on my wife for a lot of things. But that was a challenge. Things that I dislike, I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, the spitting we mentioned earlier, that's something that I still haven't been able to fully accept. But I just tell myself, I'm here, I have to accept it, and it's decreasing, and so be it, there's worse things to worry about.
Well, how about this? This is a related question. What would you like foreigners to know about China before visiting or moving to China? Just a bit of advice.
Okay. China is not the draconian evil place that you've probably heard it is, and that isn't me speaking to get any money from anyone. It's purely my perspective. It is a safe country, incredibly safe. You can leave your valuable items places and you'll come back and they'll still be there. People are respectful and incredibly hospitable. They would love to just pull, I mean, if you could speak the language, if they can't speak the language, but they will try to help you. And it's not the place it's made out to be. The government isn't watching every single person, or the cameras here, they're saying facial recognition. I mean, that technology exists in Australia. I know, because I used to work in the sector. I know it exists. But here it's more transparent. It's like, yep, we've got facial recognition. It's for your convenience, and it is. It's not there. I mean, Chinese government, how can any government possibly watch every individual person? We're talking over 1 billion people here. It's not feasible, even with technology.
I think about that too. I think for the police, and they do have cameras everywhere, they do have access to recorded footage, but it's not just to watch you. It's like if something were to happen, like you left your wallet in a taxi, they would probably be able to find it,
Yep.
Or if there were a car accident, they would be able to track it from multiple angles and find out what happened and what led to that accident. So they, the insurance companies and so forth would be able to distribute liability correctly. That's the kind of thing. Or if someone fell down, they could figure out what caused that elderly person to tumble and hey, you need to fix this. Your restaurant has this weird curb and it's dangerous. So really, the surveillance is for figuring out what caused something to happen so that they can correct that later. It's not about like watching people.
That's exactly right. I mean, the crime rate here is so low that I've been here now for just over 3 years, and I have not seen any crime, no violent crime, nothing. I mean, I know that if something does happen, the West latches onto it, and then it's just like, oh look, China's not safe, but it's not the case. And the cameras and everything that is in place here is for the safety of the people, and you see it in everyday life, and people aren't frightened to do something. I mean, people dance openly in the street, and they sing in the parks. That would never happen in Australia because everyone would be like, what the heck is wrong with that guy, right? It's different. And in some ways, I feel Chinese people have more freedom than people in the West. That's
actually, I think you're right. In a park in California where I'm from, if you and your group of friends all got together and there was 10 or 20 of you and started dancing with the stereo, you would probably get in trouble. The police would come and ask you if you have a permit. So, like in China, they just do that everywhere. People dance on the street, on the side of the mall, in like public parks. They do sword play at different hours of the day, like all kinds. They do kung fu together, like tai chi and stuff. But in the United States, if you started doing that, you would immediately be accosted and said, "Oh, you know what? You need to go and get a permit to do this," and then you would have to go through some weird bureaucratic process to be able to dance. It would be weird.
Exactly.
Okay, so are you planning on staying in China long term? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
In 10 years, I see myself here. My wife and I have had lengthy conversations about it. Granted, as I said before, one of the main drivers for moving here was my preference initially, but then we've discussed it. Since being here now and being here for a lengthy period of time together as a family, and my daughter's at school, we now have agreed, and even my wife has agreed, that this is where we're going to stay. It's safer, it's better for our daughter. So to answer your question, in 10 years' time, I see myself here. What will I be doing? I don't know. I tend to not look that far ahead in terms of career. I'm happy at the moment. That's what happened. That's the fact. But I don't ever see myself going back to Australia for good. It'll be here. And I've got a goal to get myself a green card. A lot of people kind of just laugh and go, why the heck would you want one of them? Well, I want to stay here. My wife doesn't necessarily want to give up her Australian citizenship, so it's on me, and I'm going to do what I can to get one. Irrespective of whether I get one or not, we're going to stay here. That's a simple fact.
I know you traveled. You just mentioned you went to Xi'an, which I went to. I loved it. I've been there twice. I would go back right now if I could. I loved it so much. But if you could teleport, you and your family, or just you, to any city in China right now to visit someplace that you've always wanted to visit but just haven't had the opportunity, where would you go and why?
The first place that comes to mind is one of my favorite provinces, and that's Yunnan. Especially Lijiang. Lijiang is one of my favorite cities. Xiamen is a good second, but it's where we're living, so it's home. But Lijiang, mainly because it's the start of the Himalayas, and there's so much beautiful architecture. It's nice, and the altitude's quite high. The air is beautiful. I mean, I'm not saying polluted or not polluted, but it's beautiful because of the elevation and the landscape. And the other place would be Xinjiang. I would love to go to Xinjiang, take my family there, see the horses and see the rolling plains. I haven't been there yet. It's on my list. I've traveled to quite a few other places, but I would love to go there and see the natural landscapes up there.
I was just in northern Xinjiang about, I don't know, 3, 4 months ago, and there was this father and his 3 sons, and they had all these horses, and they were doing these horse tricks for the group of audience members that we were watching, including myself. And it was amazing. Like they were mounting and dismounting the horses while they were riding, and riding sideways and almost upside down, and it was remarkable. Like this father and his 3 sons, the 3 sons were all like 15 to 20 years old, and his dad was just so proud, and he was on the sidelines telling them, okay, no, show them this one. Like, okay, no, do that. And they were just these kids having a great time. Then they were like, oh, who wants to ride a horse? And I was just like, not me.
Well,
It looks
I've tried once,
yeah.
but I'm not very good at it.
Well, based on all the movies I've seen about Australia, I'm surprised. When I was a kid watching movies about Australia, I thought every Australian could ride a horse.
Funny you say that. Like I remember, before I ever moved to China, this was before I met my wife. I made friends with a couple of American tourists that were coming through Australia, and I was helping them out. And I ended up taking them in my car and showing them around. They were actually convinced that They asked me. They said, "Did you ever ride to school on a kangaroo?" And for a second, For a second, I kind of sat there and I thought, you're pulling my leg, you're having a go, right? But it was genuine. I was just like, oh my gosh, no. I've ridden a horse in Australia once in my life. That's it. The horses are all outside in the country, or even in the suburbs of the city. But yeah, riding a kangaroo to school.
Wow.
I'll never
Wow.
forget.
Dude, we should get some AI and make that video of like people riding kangaroos and then post it. This is like normal Australian life in the outback.
Fake news, fake news.
So, could you tell us a strange story? Sure, you've been here a lot of years and over different periods of time. Tell us a story about being in China that's just peculiar or interesting.
That's a good question. You've actually stumped me, because I see a lot of things. I see a lot of things in everyday life that initially would stump me. Have you got a story?
Oh yeah, I'll tell a story. Okay, I'll tell a story to get to while you think about it. All right, I went to Qinghai. I went to Qinghai province on the west side of China, and it's broken down into different pieces. And we were going to Qinghai Lake, my wife and I. We had arrived in Xining, which I loved. It was a beautiful city. But the trip from Xining to Qinghai Lake, you have to take all these tourist buses. And everyone who goes to Qinghai Lake takes these tourist buses. That's just how you go. And so you get in a group tour or whatever, and they drop you off. You have a certain amount of hours or days, whatever. You make the arrangements, and they bring you back at a set time. And maybe it includes the ticket, doesn't, different deals. But my wife was like, no, we're going to save money, Jason, because that's my wife. And she said, we're going to take the high-speed rail 1 more stop or 2 more stops to this place that's a different angle to Qinghai Lake, and it's closer, and we'll just take our own taxi, and that way we can save money. This was her plan. So we went to this station, and when we got off at the station, and as I was getting off the train, the security there was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Foreigners are not allowed to come to this station. And I was like, well, okay, that's fine. I was very cooperative. I gave them my ID and stuff, and they were like, okay, so it turns out there's a huge military base near there. Oh. And they were like, we don't want you to go there. We're worried that you might be trying to go there as a foreigner and spy. So what we're going to do is you do order your taxi to go to the lake, but you're going to be accompanied followed by a police car just to make sure that you're headed in the right direction until you arrive at the lake. So I thought this was kind of a special experience. Because, I think the same kind of thing would probably happen in the U.S. if you went to a special area. So for me, it was kind of special. And also, we did get off at a special place where it was actually snowy. It was like snow-capped plains. And then as we're driving about an hour, we got to Qinghai Lake. And by the time we got there, it was like warm. And so I think we got to see like a little bit of special area that maybe a lot of other foreigners haven't got to see. But for me, even nothing happened. There's no follow-up. It was just that. But I kind of it's a peculiar story. Do you have any kind of story that stands out to you? Something that's happened to you? Anything at all? Meeting an old person who invited you to their home? Anything?
Yes, I have had that. Being invited to a house, sitting down and having tea, which I mentioned before about Polcha. And this was an old gentleman in Sunming, and I was introduced to him through a mutual friend of my wife's. And we met him, we sat down, we had tea. Obviously, some translation was happening for me at the time. But he sat with me and he actually gave me my Chinese name, which is Wu Jie Shu. And every time I try to pronounce that, like I can say many other names, many other things, but it's probably because it's the one I use the most, or the least, sorry. But he wrote a poem for me. And I have an image of it, and I can send you the image a little later, but he wrote a poem on red paper, on the strips of red paper. And the poem was all about the name that he had given me. And I thought, it actually took me back because I thought to myself, wow, what a thing to do. This gentleman has never met me in his life. He wasn't just doing it because I was white or I was foreign. He also was talking about similar things to my wife as well. But I also have another story, if you wouldn't mind, I can share that one.
Yeah, please.
If you've helped inspire me now and unlock my memory. When I was in Xi'an and I hired the driver, he took me around to certain sites, but during lunch, he took me to an area of Xi'an which wasn't part of the city, so the Muslim Quarter, or anywhere like that. This was out in the middle of the plains, in a little tiny town where I was thinking to myself, oh gosh, where am I? I was starting to feel like, I have no idea where I am. He took me to this little tiny restaurant which was tucked away down little side streets where they served young roll palmor. And I'd already tried it a few nights earlier in the Muslim Quarter in Xi'an City, but this was just amazing. And I was sitting in there having this bowl of this soup with the noodles and the pickled garlic, and he was sitting with me. We couldn't really converse properly. We were using translators here and there, but we were just smiling and laughing, and there were two older gentlemen that were sitting here, and they were workers. One had got his top off, and he was just sitting in there eating the same food and some bread. And they actually came and sat with me and the driver, and were talking amongst themselves and talking to me. And they fully included me, even though I couldn't converse properly. They fully included me, and they were sharing things with me, and they brought tea over, or the owner of the shop brought tea over. And that was, in one sense, unusual to me because in the West that wouldn't normally happen. But at the same time, I got quite emotional about it because I thought, wow, they are actually accepting me. I was worried, thinking, where am I? I had no idea where I was. But we ended in laughs, and the food was delicious. Got back in the car, and that I cannot forget. I actually wrote a little bit of a story about that trip. It was amazing.
That is a great story. Last question.
Yes.
For folks who maybe cannot come to China, because a lot of people back home, traveling to another continent is a very big deal, either financially or just psychologically. So what can people do other than coming to China to help them maybe better understand China?
Okay. What I would say is most important is that there are people on social media like myself who are sharing genuine stories, genuine news and information about China. There are even people who do a lot of videos and vlogging, which I'm starting to move into, but I haven't done a lot yet. Listen to them. Don't listen to the people who are saying that we're telling lies, because we're living it. We're here. We are living it. We have first-hand experience, and we're able to deliver that first-hand experience to people. Granted, the people who are receiving it, they're receiving second-hand information, but turn off the TV, turn off the news, turn off 60 Minutes, whatever it is you're watching, and talk to and learn about what people are doing and what people are saying who are actually living here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. There are a lot of people who lived here 10, 20 years ago who were making content about China bad stuff, but they don't live here. They don't know what China is like in 2025. So you should find people who do live inside China if you're going to try to learn about what China is like. That's wonderful advice. Thank you so much for your time, James. I hope we can have you back on the show again in the future.
Thank you for having me, Jason.